Hey y'all, so this was originally part of the Geekdom 101 podcast over at geekdom101.libsyn.com, but I thought I would re-upload it here on World of Geekdom so y'all can listen to our Phase 1, 2, and 3 recap shows before Avengers Endgame comes out this week. So I hope you enjoy it as we go back and, revisit the first three phases of the MCU, starting with Phase 1. And welcome back to the Geekdom 101 podcast as we talk about Phase 1 of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, where everything begun as we are about to close Phase 3 with Avengers Endgame, the most anticipated movie of the entire franchise, I would say, even more so than Infinity War, in my opinion. But we'll see how it does at the box office. We're going to go back and talk about the MCU Phase 1. Joining me for this trilogy of episodes, I guess you can call them, welcome back to the show. He's been on a couple episodes of Season 1 before of the Geekdom 101 podcast, discussing a few different things, psychology and whatnot, but he's back now to talk about the MCU. Brandon Draven from the Fabulous Lucha Brothers. What's going on?
I'm Brandon Draven.
That's it? Are you trying to do I'm Batman?
No, I'm Iron Man, bro, at the end of the movie. Where the hell's your head at?
My head's in the DC universe instead. Let me get back in the MCU here. All right. No, yeah.
You're gonna run into James Gunn and who else? Josh Whedon. They both went through the same door you went through.
That's right, bro. But you know who's about to go through that door too is Dave Bautista, bro. But he went through the other door to lay out freaking Ric Flair. And I'm not a 70-year-old man, so I think I can handle it. Give me what I want. Give me what I want. Give me what I want.
Yep. So anyway, we do a little podcast called the Fabulous Lucha Brothers, and
available on iTunes.
There's gonna be a lot of wrestle jargon, as I like to call it. So just get ready for that.
So what we're gonna do on this episode is we're not gonna review each individual film, even though we can talk about them briefly. It's more so I want to talk to you about overall the MCU Phase 1, just the first 6 films, discussing them, the storylines, where they were going with it, the build-up, all these different things. Obviously, the first one was Iron Man, followed by The Incredible Hulk, then Iron Man 2, Thor, Captain America, the First Avenger, and then it all culminated with the first Avengers film from May 4th, 2012, which wound up being, at the time, was it like the second highest grossing film behind Avatar?
Yeah, no, it was huge. And when we get to it, I'm going to tell you how excited I was about during that time.
Yeah. Now,
because let me say this, I feel like the nostalgia for the MCU actually started way back in Avengers. Well, look, I don't want to get ahead of myself, but yeah, no, that was a huge film at the time, and it's still my number 2 favorite film of the MCU, Avengers 1. Just a great fucking movie, bro.
Yeah, it was a great film, and we're going to talk about kind of the early MCU, what they were kind of going for, because things were pretty simple at the time, and then as the MCU progressed into Phase 2 and Phase 3, we started to get more and more characters and more teams, and, it really expanded, but it was really simple, and it all started with Iron Man. Now, going into Iron Man, we had heard, of course, that Avi Arad and Kevin Feige, who were the kind of the forefathers of this whole thing,
yes.
We knew they wanted to do a series of films, and there were rumors that they were going to eventually do an Avengers movie. And I remember I don't think it was even greenlit before Iron Man 1 came out. But if you saw the post-credit scene, which wound up being a thing in the entire MCU, actually, that wound up influencing so many freaking movies. That post-credit scene's been done in so many films. Everything from horror movies to other cinematic universes to even regular films. They've done that post-credit gimmick a lot. And it all started with the MCU, but at the end of the film, we saw Nick Fury say, let me talk about the Avengers Initiative. And that was the first time we ever heard that.
Oh, that was awesome.
It was a great cliffhanger. But at the time, I don't think they intended to go past Avengers. I think the plan was just to do the Avengers film, and then if it did okay, they would keep going. But I don't think there even was a plan for Phase 2.
I think they were laying the foundation. Obviously, you had S.H.I.E.L.D. there, kind of being the connective tissue that was going to connect all these movies. And S.H.I.E.L.D. gets introduced in Iron Man. And so with like Agent Coulson kind of coming back and forth and trying to get an interview with Pepper and Tony. But let me talk a little bit about, you're kind of not doing justice to how the enormity of this production, because it did change like mainstream cinema here in the United States, because before that, your standard superhero film was something completely different. I think if you really want to trace its roots, a lot of how grounded some of these films are, we have to go back and put over Christopher Nolan's Dark Knight trilogy, because he was one of the ones that kind of took the superhero trope and put it in the real world like motif and stuff, where things are happening. And it doesn't get too mystical. It doesn't get too like comic-y. That's a term. So you have to start there, and then what was his name? Avi Arad's kind of idea, because Avi was tired of having his licensing. His franchise.
Isn't he on 205 Live now? No, go ahead.
No, Avi Arad was kind of fed up with the idea that all his properties were kind of being destroyed by other studios, like the Fantastic Four, the first one, and well, actually both of them when you think about it.
And we should also say that Kevin Feige was involved in Marvel movies even before the MCU, because if you remember, he also worked on the X-Men films, and those were really big breakout movies when they came out, and then followed up by 2002 Spider-Man.
So
that's a different show, though.
Yes, so we have to take people back to where Marvel was before 2008. And they were not the powerhouse they are today. They had to license a couple of their IPs just to stay afloat. Obviously we know about X-Men and we know about Spider-Man. So they had to do that in order to stay solvent, because the comic book business was kind of like on a downswing.
In the 90s, yeah, they sold a bunch of their stuff away. And that's how Spider-Man wound up with Sony and X-Men wound up with Fox and all that, yeah.
So Avi Arad said, you know what? I'm tired of this. We got to have a little more respect for our properties. And then Kevin Feige was like, yes. And that's when he introduced his vision. Now, like you said, it wasn't concrete because they didn't even have the money to do the entire MCU yet.
That's right.
So what they did is they
in fact, wasn't it Paramount originally before even Disney came in?
Well, that was their distribution company. So what happened, because whenever you make a movie, bro, you need a distributor. You can't distribute it yourself. So you make deals with all these studios to distribute.
Like 20th Century Fox has the right to distribute Dragon Ball, but they don't own Dragon Ball.
That's right. So what Avi and Kevin Feige did through Marvel, they got a $525 million credit. They got a loan out to start financing these films. And then Kevin Feige went and he looked through the archives and he found that most of the Avengers were still with them, as far as them being able to use those properties.
Right.
So he said, okay, well, I could use the Avengers, the core Avengers, because we're missing some, but the core Avengers to kind of springboard this vision that I have.
They've got most of them now, like they do.
Yes, yes, you're right. So that was where it was, and then so they raised the money, $525 million, and then they went into pre-production with Iron Man. Now, one of the things with Iron Man that's very, very important is that they chose the right director, because one of the things that Kevin Feige wanted to do was he wanted to introduce kind of like this auteur kind of filmmakers, these kind of guys that think outside the box. He didn't want to stay stuck in that played out studio system that gives you like those, run-of-the-mill popcorn films. And when that became successful and the MCU introduced this, what it did is that it forced every single summer blockbuster to pick up their game. Summer blockbusters had this reputation of being a little bit lowbrow back in the day before 2008. Not that they all were, because obviously the Dark Knight trilogy wasn't, but with the MCU and all the films that they produced, they have very smart screenplays, they have very good actors, they have a very good production team, director, producers. So it kind of created this change in Hollywood to where you had to make films that had a little depth, that had a good story, rather than have these one-dimensional characters constantly like we had in the past. So that's a big change I think that the MCU kind of introduced.
And I think the big key to this, besides Jon Favreau directing, was Robert Downey. I think Robert Downey Jr. playing Tony Stark is really he is the backbone of all these films when you really think about it. He took that character of Tony Stark from the comics, pretty much brought it to life, literally. The only thing they don't have in the movies is alcoholic problem, which they may explore in another movie.
Well, I'm going to talk about part 2, because part 2 they reworded it. You know, they did that whole thing where he's kind of he's got that thing that's fucking him up, and he's gotta constantly kind of drink that juice or whatever. So, well, I'm gonna talk about that because there is some. Jon Favreau did want to do the alcoholism gimmick for Iron Man 2, but he was vetoed.
Yeah, well, the point is that performance from Robert Downey as Tony Stark, not only did it make this movie, but he's the shining beacon even in the bad movies, and he is, no matter which way you slice it, the main character of the MCU. I mean, you could say it's him and Captain America. I guess that would make sense, but he's like the backbone. He's the through line of the entire
He is
20 movie thing. It all started here, which is interesting because Iron Man was never an A-list star. Like, he wasn't an A-plus star. Iron Man was big in the 80s. Then in the 90s, the X-Men took over and Spider-Man. Spider-Man was big in the 80s too, but Iron Man was always like a B-plus player, bro. And because
like Kofi Kingston.
But because of this movie and the hype behind it, he became an A-lister, like The Miz.
Right. So the reason why Fabs, we're gonna call him Fabs from now on, wanted to hire Robert Downey Jr. was because he felt that Robert Downey Jr. represented everything that Tony Stark was going through. You know, this guy who lived in excess,
rough time. Yeah.
And then he had his ups and downs, and then everything was very public. Same thing like with Tony Stark in Iron Man 1. And so that's the reason why he wanted to cast him, you know, because correct me if I'm wrong, but I do believe that Tony Stark in the comics, especially the 80s ones, he was like a buffer dude, right? Like he wasn't like now because of the job that Robert Downey.
A little bit, but that's his comic book characters look like that. That's why.
Yeah, because I feel like now when we think of Iron Man, especially if we don't read the comics, we think of Robert Downey Jr. and how he would look in comic book form rather than the way that Iron Man used to look in comic book form, which you know, wasn't exactly
he used to look like Inigo Montoya, bro. Except without the wacky hair.
And he didn't have the crown goatee like Jerry Lawler and Robert Downey Jr. do.
No, he did not have that, unfortunately.
So that brings us to Iron Man 1, and I'll never forget it, bro. I mean, this is one of those films that got a lot of buzz before it came out because it started doing the festival circuit. That's another thing that the MCU did that mainstream popcorn films wouldn't do in the past, is take them through the festival circuits. Because, you know, festival circuits are made for the artsy-fartsy films, you know, the films that you want to generate buzz to get an Oscar. But Kevin Feige and Jon Favreau decided to throw this one in there, and it started getting a lot of buzz. It was like, this is an actual good film, you know? And so when it opened to a huge opening day weekend, and, you know, the rest is history.
Yeah, now, Terrence Howard, bro, what happened with this guy?
Well, he got replaced, and I think Don Cheadle's a way better roadie than he is.
I think he is too, but wasn't the story that he wanted to make as much money as Robert Downey, bro? And they said, "Fuck
yes,
you."
Yes, he did. That's right. And here's another misconception. So the Phase 1, and this goes for Chris Evans as well, who I think is the only guy that has some sort of equity as an actor, because all the other ones were all new people, including like Mark Ruffalo. Mark Ruffalo was always a great actor, but he was one of those like indie film stars, you know, the great actor that hasn't gotten his.
Well, Robert Downey also did a crap load of movies too, and Sam Jackson. Don't forget those guys.
Yeah, but Sam Jackson was more of a cameo. He wasn't really involved yet.
Yeah, Gwyneth Paltrow also had a career too.
Yeah. No, you're right about that. And of course, Jeff Bridges, bro. I mean, he's a legend, right? So
Obadiah Stane. Don't worry, we'll talk about Rockwell in the next one.
How many Dragon Ball people would you use that paralyzing gimmick on, bro? Some of these people that well, we don't want to go there.
It's a few, yeah.
So that brought us to Iron Man 1. And let's talk a little bit about Iron Man 1. Like you said, we're only gonna.
Yeah, I didn't want to review the entire movie. I just want.
No, we're not gonna review it, but I do want to skim through the top layer of every film as we're going through, and then we're definitely not gonna review it.
Yeah,
we'll be here all night.
No, and I'll say this about Iron Man 1. Iron Man 1, I think, to this day, has the absolute best origin story of any of the MCU movies. It kills Captain Marvel, it kills the Guardians, in my opinion, kills Spider-Man. I like this origin story because we're actually witnessing the man, and the entire first 2 acts of the film, we're seeing him go from literal near death in the middle of Afghanistan or whatever to creating himself into a hero, reinventing his own life. And I think that's the most powerful origin story of any MCU movie to this day.
So the thing that always stands out with me with Iron Man is how smart the screenplay is. Like you said, everything you said is true, and there's not a wasted minute in that film. And I've always put it over of how beautifully edited it is. And the thing about writing a script or a movie or whatever, you have to focus on the overall story you're trying to tell. And what happens a lot to young writers is that they get anxious or they get frustrated and they start being repetitive. And so you see movies where you could see something should get cut, but it doesn't, but it just kind of reestablishes what's already been put out there. And in this scenario, like you said, the whole idea was the redemption of Tony Stark, right? How he starts and how he ends up. Because I know that one of the big criticisms is how Obadiah Stane is not really in the film, and the Ironmonger is really not really in the film. But it wasn't about him. He was a means to an end to introduce us to Iron Man, and he was the device that was used to kind of show the redemption of Iron Man and juxtapose it with Obadiah Stane, and how like there's this whole idea of Tony Stark, of how he's been brought up, right? Like I say, he lives a life of excess, and you know, he's not a very good person, and it actually the one of the most subtle arcs that Tony has had in the entire MCU is how him not being a very good person and being selfish has had consequences. I mean, you're talking about
Ultron being one of the bigger ones.
Ultron, Guy Pearce, in part 3, it's all because of what kind of a dick
Aldrich Killian,
Alpha, bro. Yeah, Aldrich Killian. It's all about what kind of an asshole Tony was to him when he was younger.
and even Whiplash, who blames
Whiplash.
Tony's parents for all this. You know, you come from a family of thieves and butchers. Randy the Ram, dog. Robin the Ramdowski, bro.
And so, you know, you're seeing. I think this film does a great job of really introducing you to the man. Like you get to meet Tony Stark, and through that, he becomes Iron Man. This film is not about Iron Man, and it never really has been, which is good. And again, it separates. This is what separates this film from other superhero films. Like whenever you watch like Superman, for example, the film is about Superman. It's not about like Clark Kent, you know. And so this is different, and this is one of the motifs and tropes that the MCU started. Another thing, like to me, when I was growing up, was that every hero, every superhero hides their identity. Well, they decided not to do that here because this was big in 2008, and a lot of our younger audience wouldn't really understand, because before this, they always had to write a way where the superhero kept his identity. They did that in Spider-Man, the Raimi ones. They did that in all of them, Superman, even Batman. But here they didn't. Now, again, you could always just throw that away, right, and really pay no mind to it. But what they've done beautifully is, no, if you tell people who you are, you're going to create enemies just by the idea that they know who you are.
And you're going to have the government try to control you.
Exactly, because they see you as a weapon. So that's another thing that could have easily been thrown out, just because, you know, rather than thinking, okay, we're gonna get Tony Stark and we're gonna show his arrogance by revealing who he is, and then just never bring it up again. Well, that would have been bad writing, because then as an audience, you're thinking, well, what about everybody knows who he is? Why don't they come after his money, his suits? But you know what? They do go through with that. And a lot of the themes of the Iron Man arc has been the fact that he revealed who he was. Had he not revealed who he was, a lot of the films wouldn't have been able to take place. So there was consequences. The last line at the end, which is I'm Iron Man, and it just goes to credits, that has really, really, really come back and haunt Tony Stark in every single one of the times he's been on screen. And I think that's just great subtle writing, you know, because it really adds layers to the character. So that's another thing that's like so fucking good about this movie, and the way is written and all that. And so, yeah, man, it made a lot of money, and you know, it really kind of, I like I said, I really respect Fabs, because had he dropped the ball, we would have never had anything. He really set the pace. He set the look of the MCU, like the way I mean, every MCU is different. Every MCU film's different, but Jon Favreau kind of introduced the overall look of the films and the feel of the films, and then it went from there.
Yeah, well, also, I mean, I got to be honest with you. I also feel like I like Iron Man 1 because it does develop the 10 rings, which wound up being a plot point in 3, even though they dropped the ball on it. But I do like how The origin story is the focus, like you said. But I'll be honest, man, the second half of the film was not as good as the first half. I think the movie does tend to fade a bit, if you ask me.
Yeah, because then it becomes your bad guy of the week. Which one of the things now let's talk a little bit about what the MCU has done wrong, and we've talked about this, me and you, off air many
talk
times.
About it now or wait for later?
Well, no, because right off the hop they kind of and that's their villains. Like their villains are never there. I mean, a couple of occasions they have contributed greatly and have had a big effect on the overall theme of the MCU story they're trying to tell. Like you have Thanos, for example. That's the biggest one. But in general, even villains like Killmonger, like they're just there to kind of enhance the superhero story. They're not really there for us to follow them after that story. And I think that's there's some sort of that's like a negative thing, because the DC universe has gone the opposite, and they've actually done a decent job of protecting their villains. So not a great job, but a decent job. So that's something that the MCU should really look into, because that's one of the only big criticisms that I have. This is an amazing accomplishment. I mean, think about it. Like in the history of cinema,
changed the way movies are made completely.
Yeah, and we've never had a 10-year overarching arc with different characters. You could say Harry Potter, but that was one story.
That was one story. Yeah, Star Wars is one story. This is Star
Wars took a big break.
And it took a big break. Yeah, this is multiple movies a year.
And they all have a connective tissue to each other, which is great. And everybody has gotten along. I mean, they've had some bumps on the road, but in general, everybody has gotten along. Everybody has looked out for the product rather than themselves. So there's been a lot of unselfishness for the last 10 years, and there's a lot of egos there, and yet everybody has been able to work together. So, there's no two ways about it. This MCU
history, bro.
has it's a big deal to me, and that's why we're doing this show.
Well, you said everybody worked together, but that's not entirely true as we get to the second film, Incredible Hulk. June 13th, it came out a month after Iron Man, right? So they already had the wheels in motion for this. This is one of those movies that really sticks out like a sore thumb. I mean, I like the film. I don't love it.
It has Timmy Roth in it, bro, so we better at least like it.
That's right, but Eddie Norton... What happened with Eddie Norton, bro? This guy was supposed to be our Bruce Banner, and even though I honestly like Mark Ruffalo more, what happened?
Well, Eddie Norton has a reputation for being hard to deal with in Hollywood. He's the kind of guy that would come into your picture and start rewriting everything, including this film. There was a lot of original ideas here that Eddie Norton did not like. And so he just went in there and he rewrote it, because he had that kind of power at the time. And he actually did that to another film called American History X with Eddie Furlong, which is a great film, by the way.
Very well-known movie.
But there was a lot of drama with him and the director, to the point where the director took his name out of the film. And I don't know if they use the Alan Smitty synonym that a lot of these films use whenever the director doesn't want to be credited, but I don't think so. I think they did end up giving him credit. But the point being that what's his name? Edward Norton came in, and he pretty much took over the production. He did a lot of things that Kevin Feige didn't like, and I think this is when Kevin Feige realized, look, if this is gonna be a vision we're gonna see all the way through, I'm going to have to make some changes, because, again, like you said, he had replaced Rhodey, and now he was going to replace Edward Norton. So after the film was over, they had the big blow up, and Edward Norton did zero promotion for this film. He said, fuck it. And so the film came out.
He had no idea how big this was going to be. No clue.
It made good money because of the equity that Iron Man had built just a month prior.
And the fact that the Hulk is an over character. I mean, we've seen the Hulk on television for years with Lou Ferrigno with the crackers in his mouth. Not to mention the Ang Lee movie, which I originally thought was going to be part of the MCU. I thought the Ang Lee movie was part of the MCU until this movie kind of rode over it.
And the thing to me is that I feel like everything worked out. A life course corrected, as it tends to happen.
I feel like Ruffalo's better for the role, but I'm sorry, but it makes this movie, I guess, less important or less impactful. Like, you don't even have to watch this movie when you're watching your rewatch of the MCU. You can skip it.
No, and you're right, because so the post-credit scene here,
it doesn't even make sense.
No, because Tony Stark's talking about the Abomination. He's not talking about the Hulk, because he goes up to a Thunderbolt And
Claude Thunderbolt Patterson,
no,
not him.
not
Okay.
him. The other Thunderbolt, the one that's
Ross.
less over in our eyes.
Yeah, Thunderbolt Ross, not Jimmy Ross.
Thaddeus, bro.
Thaddeus, that's right, bro.
Played by the great Billy Hurt.
Well, don't forget, Thaddeus is also the name of Mauser from Police Academy, another one of our favorites. So, where are my eyebrows, Proctor?
So, a couple of things here that are pretty interesting. First of all,
I'm sorry, Thaddeus is Harris's name. My bad.
First of all, they introduced the super soldier serum here for the first time, which Emil Blonsky decides to overdose
Elmo
on.
Blatch.
Timmy Roth. And so there's a couple of good scenes here. This is not the worst movie or anything like that. There's some salvageable things, and it is worth the watch because it's very interesting. Essentially, this movie, what happens is that it becomes a big chase scene because they're just chasing the Hulk throughout the entire movie, and he wants to hook up with Betty Ross, who's played by Liv Tyler, who's completely been retconned, by the way. So here, Emil Blonsky decides to, in order to keep up with Bruce Banner, he takes the serum, the super soldier serum,
to become the Abomination.
And they have a great scene in the park in Central Park, I think it is, where they have this fight scene between the Hulk as the Hulk and Emil Blonsky as a human being. And there's the part where he kicks him, bro. Remember that part where he kicks Emil Blonsky, and then they have that special effect of fucking Emil Blonsky, like, you know, being punted like a football.
Yeah.
And it almost looks like a cartoon. And they show him pissed off, like, because he's regenerating. That's a pretty cool scene. And then Tim Roth is all pissed. He's like, give me more. And so that's pretty cool. I like that a lot. And of course, the ending of this film, they set it up for him to either be the hero, I'm talking about the Hulk, or a babyface, because he ends up being able to control the Hulk for the very first time as he's doing his experiment. He looks up and he's got the green eyes, but you could tell that is Bruce Banner who has the green eyes. So in essence, they leave you with a cliffhanger of whether he's going to be good or bad. And what I do like about this film,
it doesn't even matter. That's the funny part.
Well, it kind of does though, because in Age of Ultron they do have to deal with him for a little while, which, you know. So this film, I mean, and then another thing too, before we move on to the next one, Mark Ruffalo adds this pretty fucking awesome, like a humanistic quality to Bruce Banner that Ed Norton never did. Like there's this hurt.
He seems like a regular guy, is what it is.
But he also seems burdened with this curse of the Hulk, whereas Eddie Norton was more, I don't want to say more prideful of the Hulk, because he was also kind of like didn't want to deal with him either, but he couldn't emote that feeling of helplessness that Mark Ruffalo does, especially in Avengers 1, where you kind of feel for the guy because he has to walk around with this potential danger at all times. And so I thought that was, you know, that's just good acting by Mark Ruffalo, because I'm sure that wasn't on the written page. So in that sense, yes, Mark Ruffalo is definitely the better choice. Interestingly enough, he's been able, even after the first one, when he first debuted as the Hulk in Avengers, right off the hop, he did such a great job of erasing Edward Norton from our psyche, you know, because now when we think of Bruce Banner, we don't even think of Ed Norton anymore. We think of Mark Ruffalo.
Right.
So and that's not because he's done all these movies since. That happened after the first time he was the Hulk. So yeah, so all in all, it was a good choice by Kevin Feige, and you know, don't shed any tears for Ed Norton, because he's had an incredible career himself. Besides,
he's a big star even before and after these movies.
Yes, so it's not like he went into obscurity after by making the mistake of pissing the wrong people off. So
well, Terrence Howard kind of did.
Well, he's in that show now. That's pretty big.
Yeah, I know the athletic show. Yeah. Iron Man 2.
So let me say this. As we're going through these films, I am going to tell people where the stones are at and where they end up, just so people could know. So we haven't been introduced to any of them yet, but as we're moving forward, I'm going to tell people this is where this stone's at, because, you know, that seems to be one of the most confusing aspects of the MCU and the story, because for a while people didn't know where the fuck all these stones were, but if you see all the movies, it makes perfect sense where they all end up, except Captain Marvel kind of threw another wrench in those plans, but we'll get to it when we talk about that film. Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about Iron Man 2.
I was hyped for this movie. The trailer came out for it. I was super hyped. Mickey Rourke was on the comeback. Sam Rockwell's in it. This film
Oh, I
is
love me some Sammy Rockwell, bro.
it's not very well liked. This is not a very well liked movie. Don Cheadle is good. Gwyneth Paltrow's good. Scarlett Johansson's good. They introduced Natasha Romanoff in this movie. Natalie Rushman. I don't hate this movie. I think the last half, like with the first Iron Man, is a step down, but I actually think it's a bigger step down. I think the last half of the film is a huge, huge problem. Just because it goes by so fast, nothing really matters, and like I didn't like that. Mickey Rourke I thought was great at first. Then they make him this weirdo like bird guy, and then he winds up like killing himself at the end to where it was weird. It was like completely pointless. And
But it's almost as you described that
comical, bro.
It's almost like this iconoclasm of like Mickey Rourke's real life career, you know, because like you said, he gets up, he gets down, and then he fucking kills himself, just like he did his career. So this is about, I want to say about a year after The Wrestler, because the people that weren't around back then or weren't paying attention to this.
It was a few months. It was like what, like 6 months after The Wrestler, May 7th.
So Mickey Rourke was a big.
This is after he punched out Jericho at WrestleMania 25.
So Mickey Rourke was a big deal in the 80s. Then because of decisions he made, including becoming a boxer, his career floundered, and he just became a has-been, like a lot of people in Hollywood. And then he did the movie called The Wrestler, and that got him over. I mean, this guy was in demand like there's no tomorrow.
You see me.
Well, there is the Cat Miller playing the Sheik.
And Nigel McGuinness playing Nigel McGuinness, bro.
Yeah. Before or after the concussions?
Probably during.
So Mickey Rourke was in huge demand, right? And everybody was going gaga over him. The Big Return.
Remember the Expendables?
Yeah, he was in the Expendables. He was having sexual intercourse with young ladies again. Everything was going good for
like
Mickey.
Rick Steamboat, bro.
And so he gets hired to do this film, right? To play the Russian. Ivan, I don't know, Anton.
Not Ivan Drago, bro. Don't get it mixed up here. Ivan Vanko.
Why do they have to all be called Ivan, bro?
What's up with Ivan, bro? Now here's the thing. In the comic book, Whiplash is a different character. Whiplash is basically a woman in the comic books, and what they did for the movie, this is the first time the movie took their own creative liberties, is they combined two characters. There's a character in the comics known as the Crimson Dynamo, and there's one called Whiplash. So they basically combined them together to make.
They should have called him the Crimson Dynamo, bro. That's alpha as fuck right there.
Crimson Dynamo is an alpha fucking name, but yes, Whiplash is indeed different in the comics. So just combine the two characters, and you've got this person.
So this is the film where I feel that the MCU was solvent enough to just fund their own entire films that they've been showing us. So, and this is the one that really lays the foundation. From this point going forward, there's more connective tissue than there was with the Hulk or with Iron Man 1. And it really does a good job of expanding the universe, because we also get introduced to the Hammer at the end in the post-credit scene.
That's right, which was awesome. That popped me.
And so one of the things that me and you were talking off air was, I believe it was called the Demon in the Bottle storyline, right? Where Tony Stark becomes an alcoholic in the comics.
That's correct.
And Jon Favreau wanted to do that storyline. He really wanted it, but he got vetoed because it wasn't kid friendly. So there was already a lot of bad blood starting to build with Fabs and Marvel. Not that there is anymore, but there was for this film. And so they vetoed that. So what he did was that he created a storyline where the arc reactor was the one that was slowly poisoning him, and it's almost like he had to drink this solution to kind of keep him alive, you know. So they kind of went around it that way, according to Fabs, anyway. And the thing about this film is, and this film also replaces Rhodey, like we talked about. It's Donnie Cheadle takes over the role, which again, another good choice there, because Don Cheadle's pretty awesome. So this film is very disjointed, and it's a very weird film because it seems like it was serving a few masters. So the first half is very dark. We're talking about, like we said, about Tony slowly dying. He's kind of decomposing from the inside. Whiplash has a lot of screen time in the beginning, and he's kind of planning his revenge.
And the scene at the racetrack was amazing. I love that scene so much.
So we have this, and then we, like you said, she's what's her name? Natalia Romanoff.
Natasha Romanoff, yeah.
Yeah, she comes in and she gets
Or
introduced.
Natalie Rushman, bro. Yeah.
Natalie Neidhart.
No, not her.
So she gets introduced here, and then they have a funny scene with Happy Hogan and her, where she kind of punks him out in the ring, which is probably another reason why Fabs got pissed off. Now he probably wrote that. So
well, yeah, he got pulled after this one. He didn't do Iron Man 3. We'll get to that next time.
So we also get introduced to Justin Hammer. Again, we talked about Tony Stark and how much of an asshole he's been when he was younger. What Justin Hammer is kind of like the second he has he's got Hammer Industries, right? The second weapon developer, and he's always kind of been jealous of Tony Stark because he's always been the second banana.
And in the comics, he was a recurring villain because he would often be the guy who would give other enemies of Iron Man technology. Like he was sort of like the
Kraven the Hunter, bro.
No, not Kraven the Hunter. What?
I'm just throwing out some random.
You're just throwing out random names that don't even have anything to do with this. Yeah.
The Scorpion.
No, I was saying he's kind of like Lex Luthor, bro, where he has he funds a lot of Iron Man enemies, consistently in the comics. But they should
have hired that fucking Social Network dweeb to play Justin Hammer.
I don't know about that, bro.
Steve Gutenberg, or what's his name?
No, Jesse Eisenberg. You mean? Bro.
Okay.
Now Steve Gutenberg would have been awesome as Hammer, bro. Carry Mahoney, bro.
He couldn't do that little juke and jive though in the convention when he's marking up for himself.
The black guy who does sound effects come in, bro. He would have been a great side character for him, bro. And
George Winslow.
Michael Winslow, bro. George Winslow.
Jesus Christ. So, like you said, we have that first half of the film, and
Not
then
Carl Winslow.
No, he's in Die Hard and Die Harder with Billy Sadler.
That's right.
So it all leads
push-ups with no shirt on.
No, nothing.
No,
on,
nothing.
Bro.
That's right. He was naked.
The old birthday suit.
Yeah.
So it all leads to that awesome fucking the Monaco Historic Grand Prix. Not the G1 Grand Prix. That's another thing. But this is the Monaco Historic Grand Prix, and that's a great scene, bro. And it's only an hour in, so you're looking at that, and then Whiplash comes in and he introduces his fucking badass whips, bro, that are made from the same like arc reactor technology.
Yep.
And
slices the damn race car in half. I love that scene, really. And the movie just goes downhill from there, bro. I'll be real with you.
Another thing that I want to talk about is a little subtlety of the evolution of the suits. Now, I know that in the nerd culture, all the suits have names.
Yeah, they do Mark 1, Mark 2. Yeah, and in the movies they kind of do too, but they do.
Yeah. So they're all different suits, and Tony calls them. He actually names all his suits. So we started with the bulky suit in Iron Man, then it went to the one that he built where he fights the Ironmonger, and then there's this suit. This is the next evolution of the suit, which comes in a wacky suitcase. And I love how they build that tension of Pepper being stuck in the car with Happy, and then they're trying to get the suit to Tony, and then he finally gets it, and then he beats up Ivan with the suit once he has the suit on. But it's cool because as Ivan's getting arrested, bros, because Ivan knows what he lost, bro. Ivan knows that he humiliated him on TV. And Ivan,
he even cut that promo where he was like, gods can bleed. Yeah, that was good stuff, bro.
That was good, bro. I love that
great
shit.
Stuff.
And then even though we see Ivan getting arrested and he's bloody, he looks at Tony and he goes, "You lose." And because he understands what he did to Tony, right? He fucked with his ego, which is one of the things that Tony Stark, if you ever want to get him, you go for his ego because he's got a big ego and he's a very insecure guy. So then it becomes a different movie, bro, because
I don't know what happened there, bro.
So they fucking blow off. This is fucking stupid. This is what pissed me off. So they blow off the whole arc reactor killing Tony in the worst fucking like Deus Ex Machina you could imagine. So Nick Fury shows up in a donut shop and he just tells them like, "Oh, if you see this video, your dad will tell you how to fix it." And they fix it like within a minute. Like you build up this big storyline motif and then you just blow it off like within a minute, and it has no semblance of anything going forward for the second half of the film, which is weird. And then also the way Rhodey gets the fucking War Machine suit has always pissed me off because they go for comedy. What happens is that Tony Stark's depressed because he got showed up at the racing thing and he's also dying, right? So he's depressed and he throws a party. So he's right there at his pad and he has the Iron Man suit and he's drunk and he's shooting lasers and shit. And then Rhodey comes in to regulate him, and then Rhodey throws on a suit, right? Which is cool because that's really where it was going. But then they have like this skirmish that should be more serious than it is because this is pretty high tech technology. And then Rhodey takes off with the suit, and then he just keeps it forever to this day, bro. And it's like the big build up to War Machine, and that's it. Like a little comedy scuffle, and then he just has a suit now.
That's right.
It was fucking stupid, bro. It was fucking.
And
stupid.
didn't they make a joke where he's like, "Oh, I need the suit back"? He never gave it back to him.
Yeah, and it was dumb, bro. And he just knows how to use it, right? Like whatever. And then the movie falls apart. So then Ivan goes. So Justin breaks Ivan out of jail, and then he just doesn't do nothing.
Well, he starts to build the other suits. And then Tony and War Machine chew through him like nothing, bro.
And then all of a sudden it's like, I want a bird. And what kind of bird? What kind of bird, buddy? We'll get you a bird. What do you want? Russian bird? This is not my bird. I want my bird. And so it's stupid, dude. And then finally it builds up to the ending scene where, like, at the Stark Expo, you know, like we said earlier, Hammer's marking out because he thinks he has the best technology. And then he introduces all the robots, bro, the Marines, and they play like the military song, bro. I love that part, though. And then all of them come out, you know, the Marines, the Army, the Air Force. And then all of a sudden, fucking Ivan just takes over them, bro. And he starts attacking. They're like in this big glass house or some shit.
Yeah, they attack, and then Tony has to go in there and stop them. And it's the first time we see Iron Man and War Machine work together, and that was cool. But it was very anticlimactic the way that movie ended. And so
they destroyed Vanko, or Vanko destroys himself.
He kills himself, your pick. Yeah.
And well, no, at first they fuck him up, and then he does the Predator gimmick, bro, where he dials up a number, and he's gonna explode and take everybody with him. And so that's it. That's the movie. As this is going on, Agent Coulson takes off. Like right in the middle of the movie, he says, "I got something in New Mexico." Okay, well he's gone. And then of course they show the post-credit scene.
It's the hammer.
It's the hammer. So that was pretty cool.
That takes us into Thor. Now, what surprised me about Thor is that it had a lot of very big actors. Now, I'm not saying the other movies didn't, but here we have Natalie Portman, who at this time
everybody except Thor, when you think about it.
In many ways, yeah. I mean, she had already won awards. We've got
Kenneth Branagh, who's like a very dignified like theater actor and director.
Yeah, definitely. And Anthony Hopkins. I mean, a real legend. And really, he's great as Odin. Now, this was the first movie that really explored like the more fantastical side of the MCU. Because the previous three films were all technological for the most part. Here we actually have like fantasy. And they have that whole line in the trailer where he's like, you know, science and magic, you know, where we come from, it's the same thing. You know, that's kind of a cool explanation. Here's the thing about the way I feel about Thor. I like it. I don't love it. The first time I saw it, I really enjoyed it. But I feel like upon repeat viewings, it's not a bad movie. It's just kind of a by-the-numbers movie. Like the Phase 1 films were very much kind of by the numbers.
Yeah, but here, Thor, again, now we're introduced to another origin story. And Thor's, his whole arc is, you know, he feels like he's
movie from the other two.
Yes, and it starts. It's like you said. It starts very. It has that English flair to it, especially the first half. The first half, you know, it has that Middle Earth feel to it, which I like. I thought that was pretty cool, actually, how they did that.
Yeah.
And it has a great. This is probably my second favorite score because it's got that very heroic, like awesome score. And then my first score from the entire MCU is the Avengers score.
Me too.
But this is my second favorite, and then the Guardians would be my third favorite. But here, so you have that Middle Earth feel. Very, very. It looks beautiful. Asgard looks beautiful. They did a great job with that. They, like you said, this is where we get introduced to other worlds, which was necessary.
Big old titties.
But she doesn't show them or cleavage or nothing, which is a shame.
It's a shame, but that's okay. Google is your friend.
But again, you're doing more world building because this is also the first time they bring up the 9 realms, and that would be very, very important later on if you're paying attention.
Yeah.
And this is also where they show the Asgardians kind of like the protectors of the 9 realms, which again becomes very important, especially in Thor Ragnarok. This is all connected, folks, and they do a great job connecting every little detail because Thanos cannot succeed without certain things happening in every previous movie. Because if Thor's sister hadn't destroyed Asgard,
well, you're jumping ahead, but okay, I got you.
Yeah, but anyways, I'm trying to explain it, but I'll get there later. And so one of the things here this movie deals a lot with humility, right? And because Thor feels that he's the heir of the throne, and he's overconfident, and because he was brought up to be the heir of the throne. And of course, we haven't talked about Loki, bro, who gets over. Like,
didn't he work the MLW show recently?
I knew you were gonna say that, bro. So Tom Hiddleston, who hadn't really done much before this, he gets cast as Loki.
He's a prelim guy.
And he's a job guy, and so he did such a great job, and he's a very charismatic guy that they chose him to be the main villain of the Avengers movie, of the first big
which
team.
The post-credit scene of this is what leads right into that.
That's right. So there's a lot of high stakes in this film. But what brings it down, like you said, is the origin story aspect of it, especially because Loki is kind of being a tweener, and then he goes complete bad guy towards the end of the film, where we kind of see his true motive. What was I gonna say? Oh, so they do the fish out of water thing here. Of course, they have to do that, which I thought was pretty good though, because one of the things that they did, again, we talk about good casting. I think Chris Hemsworth was a good Thor. He's very charismatic.
He's a great Thor, and actually, the movie reminds me a lot of Highlander. The first act, where he's getting the fish out of water, and they're screwing around with him, don't even know how strong he actually is.
But even right here, it has some very clever writing, because when he's on Earth, he's still talking with that Asgard accent, which is pretty cool. I dug it.
No, it's like King Booker.
And then there's that good scene where him and what's his name? Dr. Slovik, what's his name?
Yeah, Slovik. Yeah, he's like the guy.
Selvig.
Yeah, the guy who ends up finding the Tesseract or whatever.
Yes, well, that's later. And so, because the Tesseract's not in this movie yet.
No, but at the very end, it's discussed in the post credits.
So Selvig and Thor have a pretty cool scene where they're kind of drinking together, because what happens is that Odin casts Thor down to Earth, and then, he can't lift the fucking hammer. We also get introduced to Hawkeye here in this film for the very first time in a cameo, because Hawkeye is the one that's taking care of the facility where they're trying to take the hammer out. So they build this big tent, and Hawkeye's the one that's up there taking care of it. So they see Thor can't pick up the hammer, and that's his arc, right? He needs to have humility. So he's there, and the way he gets it is when he sacrifices himself to that the destroyer gimmick, not the wrestler that just passed away. There was this big robot that would shoot fire.
Not the one that killed Godzilla.
No, maybe it was. Who knows?
Destroyer.
And so he sacrifices himself, and then he gets the hammer, and then he fucks up the destroyer, and then he goes back to fucking Middle Earth, and then he casts Loki out into the. He actually cast him out into wherever the fuck Thanos was to give him the Mind Stone later on Avengers. What do you think of the three warriors?
I mean, you said the hammer against the destroyer. I don't know if that's a Minnesota main event, bro, for AWA, but wait, which three warriors?
The Volstagg and his friends, bro.
Oh, you know Volstagg, Fandrag, and Hogan or whatever, bro.
Yeah, and Hogan.
Yeah, not Hulk Hogan, bro, but
or Happy Hogan.
They're okay. They're kind of prelim guys, bro. I mean, they look cool.
Lady Sif is hot though.
Yeah, they look cool. No, I mean they're cool. It's just that they're kind of prelim guys. I never really paid much attention to them, to be honest with you.
So tell us a little bit about the post-credit scene before we move on to Captain America.
Well, yeah, like I said, the post-credit scene is Selvig, and then Nick Fury. She talks about the Tesseract, and then we find out that Loki has mind controlled him or something.
Yes. So that's weird, because out of all before the post-credit scenes before this one, they were all pretty simple. This one, it kind of leaves you confused because there's so much stuff you don't know yet. So this was kind of a big risk. Like, how did Loki get to Earth? How could he control Selvig? Oh, you're right. No, the Tesseract. This is where the Tesseract first comes out, because S.H.I.E.L.D. has it. So they're experimenting with it.
Yeah, and that would lead into Captain America: The First Avenger, which is where we actually see the Tesseract back in the day.
Another and Hugo Weaving is the lead hero. Tell us a little bit about Hugo Weaving, bro.
Well, he's awesome, bro, and everything. I mean, Babe,
Matrix, Lord of the Rings. He's awesome, bro. But
Mr. Anderson.
another all-star cast. I mean, we got Hugo Weaving, of course, Sebastian Stan. He
was Sebastian. He didn't
no,
do much.
he wasn't much. No, but I'm saying he would become something. But Tommy Lee Jones for sure, and Hugo Weaving
and Stanley Tucci, bro.
Who does he play?
He plays Abraham, the guy that gives him the super soldier.
The guy. Okay, yeah. God, what was his name, bro? Now
Abraham, Doctor Escrine, Escrine.
Yeah. Abraham Erskine. Yeah. Well,
but he's the one. He's the Odin. He's the what was the name of the scientist in the cave with Tony? The Yedin.
Yeah,
right?
he's like the sidekick mentor. Yeah, I know.
One thing about Stan Lee, bro, and his creations or whomever took over for writing for him, he always has the old timer who imparts the wisdom to always be a good person to whomever is gonna get the power.
Same thing
right?
happened in Doctor Strange.
Same thing happened in Spider-Man. Like it happens all the time.
Yeah. No,
it didn't happen in the Punisher though, bro. I'll tell you, that guy's fucking out of his mind, and he stayed out of his mind, which is alpha as fuck. Bro.
Hell yeah, bro. Anything with Thomas Jane in it is good, bro. And it was shot.
Well, I'm talking about John Bernthal, but all right.
Oh, okay. Well, him too. Well, I mean, the character's the same. So, here's the thing about Captain America. I like it, but it's a one-and-done movie. I've only seen this movie twice in my entire life. Once when it first came out, that I watched it again last year during my MCU rewatch. And it's okay. It's an okay movie. Don't think it's the best MCU movie at all. I think it's a mid-tier movie at best. I thought it was just okay to me. Really, in some ways, the middle act's kind of boring.
Well, I think I was texting to you the other day. Captain America becomes a very interesting character because he's morally developed, which is something you rarely see in any origin story or even any character introduction. So his arc is not a fight within himself,
yes.
which is very weird. And again, like I was texting you the other night, you could even call this guy one of those fucking what do you call them again, bro? Those people that never sell.
The guys who never sell.
No, bro. The like Rey in Star Wars.
Oh, Mary Sue's and Gary Stu.
Yes, yeah. So he's threatening on that Gary Stu because nothing faces him. Like his whole complexity as a character is this idea that he's morally grounded, and everything external to him has to change to the way he sees it. That's what Captain America is.
He's basically a white meat babyface. I mean, that's essentially what he is. He is the MCU's white meat babyface. And I'm okay with that. It's okay to have one character like that. You just can't have them all be like that.
And also, that's a good example of how you write. If you are going to write Gary Stu, that's how you write him. Because this guy, nothing's ever going to faze him. He's never going to be in real trouble because he has no family. He's got, there's nothing you could take away from him.
Well, except for now, they took all his friends away from him. Thanos did. So now we have motivation. No, for real. I mean, for real.
No, you're right. So it's interesting how the narrative in Captain America always plays out because it's always external to him. It's not internal like you would get over another character. And it's also very difficult because it's very limited. And I think that's the reason why they had to, with the Winter Soldier, they had to take away S.H.I.E.L.D. because what else are you going to do with Captain America? It's very difficult to write for someone who's like morally developed and whose entire character is the fact that he is correct in some of his views, right? So
that's later why they did it with Bucky. Bucky was the one that was kind of trying to, figure himself out. That's the character who they wrote that for,
Right. So I really like this film. Again, this film introduces us to the Tesseract. So that's the Space Stone is the first one that gets and actually the Space Stone for whatever reason is the one that gets a lot of love in the MCU.
Yes.
And so right here, what happened was that Odin cast it down to Earth many, many, many years ago in one of his many battles, and it was the Red Skull found it in one of the villages, so he started using it to build weapons. And so the thing about Hydra, this also introduces us to Hydra, is that it's essentially they're Nazi Germany pretty much, and they don't hide it because he actually betrays Hitler in this movie. The Red Skull is the weapon developers for the Nazi, and he has his own crew called Hydra. And so he's called General Schmidt or something like that. And so when he gets the Tesseract, he starts making weapons.
Schmidt. Yes, I just want to clarify.
Isn't that Jim Villan, bro?
No, man, I wish though.
And so, right, so he starts making weapons. He weaponizes the Tesseract, and he also starts fucking with the super soldier serum that was left over by Dr. X-Crine, because they used to be associates. And then Dr. X-Crine kind of went to the United States, and he brought the super soldier serum with him, which he gave to Captain America. But of course, he knew how to develop it, and then they kill him, and so there's only one Captain America. Although if you read the comics, there's more. But so the Red Skull experimented with that serum before it was perfected, and then it ended up kind of disfiguring him a little bit. So that's where we're at with that. And this film is interesting because I love it because it works as a propaganda film, but it's a parody of the propaganda films of the 1940s when they were trying to get you to join the.
It really is. But here's the thing. That's a parody of the original Captain America comics, because the Captain America's original comics in the 30s were propaganda. Like, it all fits.
Yes.
That's what Captain America was, dude.
And for the people that have never seen it, I mean, you would have to be a cinephile. Very few people have seen it. There is a number of films directed by Frank Capra called Why We Fight, and it's essentially that they would show them in classrooms and just around the nation.
And we should also point out too that this is not the first Captain America film. There was a whole series of Captain America movies that came out in the 80s.
That's right. They were horrible.
Low budget, very low budget. Yeah.
What about Tommy Lee Jones' name is called Chester Phillips, bro?
I don't know why that pops you, but okay.
And Natural Born Killers, what does it say? Hey, we're in Texas. You know what they say about Texas, right? Steers and queers. My mama is from Texas. Well, except her. I love that line, bro. Right. We're in Tarantino. So, by the way, it is Tommy Lee Jones and Robert Downey Jr. were the ones that are having that exchange, I believe.
Yeah.
So and Robert Downey Jr. has a wacky accent throughout that entire movie, bro. Natural Born Killers. I was in Grenada. I fought in Grenada. But so I love this movie. It has like that throwback feel to it. It's like a parody of those films from back in the day. You have Peggy Carter, who would go on to get her own show called Agent Carter, yes, which is a prequel to all of these films, because she's there to create SHIELD with Howard Stark and Chester Phillips, and then later on they retcon Hank Pym was also part of that, the creation of SHIELD. So that's very interesting. People should check out that show because that show is very connected to the films, and it's only 12 episodes, and it really kind of lays the groundwork for what SHIELD would become before it got destroyed in Winter Soldier. Yeah, dude. So I definitely like this film. Again, at the end, it kind of goes into that old, villain versus good guy fight that they all kind of fall into at the end, just out of necessity. But what happens is that Captain America promises Peggy Carter that he's gonna take her out to dance later that night, but he never comes home because in the ensuing battle with the Red Skull opens up the Tesseract and he falls into a pit, which will be paid off big time later on in Infinity War, and we never see the Red Skull again.
I thought he flew up into space.
Yeah. Well, he did with the Tesseract.
Yeah, he flew up and disappeared, and then we saw him again in Infinity War. Yeah.
So the Tesseract falls into the ocean, and then Captain America falls into the ocean with it in Antarctica, and he freezes for 70 years. And interestingly enough,
and they find him at the post-credit scene.
Yes. But there is no, the post-credit scene here is the teaser to Avengers.
No. Remember, he woke up and he's in the hospital room.
That's not the post-credit scene. That's still in the movie.
Oh, I thought that was the post-credit scene.
No. So.
Oh no, you're right. Because the punching bag is the post-credit scene.
Yeah, that's the going into Avengers.
That's right.
So
And I should also note that in the comics, the cosmic cube and the stones were two totally different things. That's probably why they have the Tesseract. That's such a big deal, because the cosmic cube is not the same thing as how it was in the movies. Just making sure you know that.
Okay. Yeah, they changed as they're going along. They're changing a lot of stuff. And so at the end of the film, so Red Skull disappears, and then he gets frozen, and he never goes on a date with Peggy Carter. And again, good kudos to them for the continuity, because that does haunt him as he wakes up, and he feels like this guy's morality is so grounded and so developed that he still feels bad about not being there for her. I mean, I know he wanted to fuck her too. Let's be real about it.
70 years late, bro.
but Howard Stark finds him and the Tesseract. How the fuck it ended up with Marvel? Kind of.
I'm guessing Howard Stark gave it to Marvel at some point.
You could connect it, which is good. I don't dock him points on that too much. You could connect it. Remember, folks, there's 20-year gap there, so a lot of things could have happened.
Makes sense, yeah.
And so that's how it ends. You know, interestingly enough, in the Incredible Hulk, they have a deleted scene of Edward Norton wanting to commit suicide in Antarctica, so that way if the monster comes out, the Hulk, he's in Antarctica, he won't hurt anybody. And then as he's contemplating suicide, in the background you could see Captain America frozen with the ship. So that was kind of cool how they did it even back then. And it's very quick though. You have to look for it, but it's there. And so eventually Captain wakes up and they have this mock bedroom from back in the day, the 40s. But he figures it out because he was at that ball game that's on the radio. So they fucked up right there. So he listens to the ball game and he's like, wait a minute. I was at that game, so how could I be listening to that game? And then he runs out, and it has that cool fucking ending where he runs out and it's modern times,
yeah, the
bro.
streets and everything, yeah.
And then he's in Times Square, and then he just looks and he's like, where am I? And that's when the movie ends. I like this movie a lot, bro. I don't give a fuck what you say.
No, I don't dislike it. I just think it's a mid-tier movie.
And it has the great character actor Dominic Cooper playing Howard Stark, which would be his introduction, because they usually had the old Howard Stark, the old Howard Stark comes back for Ant-Man, I believe, but here we revert back to the young Howard Stark, and he does a lot of cool little Easter eggs here. He introduces the flying car that would become the technology that fuels S.H.I.E.L.D. and their big ships. But right here, he's got this old car that he tries to lift, and it kind of crashes and burns, and everybody kind of laughs at him for that. So definitely. There's nothing bad I could say about any of the movies we've covered, bro, including Iron Man 2. They all have their watchability value for different reasons, and they're also very rewarding when you connect all of them, including the Incredible Hulk in some ways. Not in a lot of ways, but in some ways.
Now, with the Avengers, this was the big culmination. You know, all the build up for about 4 years or so. The Avengers comes out in May, blows away everything. This is when I just want to say this: honestly, the best piece of content I've ever seen about the Avengers is a film series, mini documentary on YouTube called Really That Good, that Movie Bob did. And Movie Bob covered the Avengers and discussed every reason as to why that movie really is that good. And I'll be honest, when I first saw the film, I didn't like it as much as I liked it upon subsequent viewings. The more I watched the movie, the more I liked it because of the way the characters interact, the screen time they got, and the great moments and the soundtrack. Just the Avengers is truly a classic movie, and it really is. It made a lot of money, and it's a great freaking payoff to all these other movies, all the build-up.
And everything that all of them have gone through has a consequence in this film. And it's like what we were talking about, like I was talking about with you earlier, going into this film, I'll never forget it, opening night. I'm sure I was talking to you back and forth at this time.
I was there opening night, yeah. Remember, we were marking out because that was the summer that Dark Knight Rises came out, a movie I was really dick riding, and Amazing Spider-Man.
Which you were not dick riding.
No, but it didn't deserve to be dick rode.
Amazing. Was that the one with Electro or
no? That's the lizard. The lizard, bro. Oh.
They didn't give the payday to the other homeboy, bro, who had earned it. They brought in a new lizard.
That's right.
So I remember being in the theater and again just thinking back. This is interesting, right? This is wacky. I was thinking back of how awesome the previous 5 movies have built up. Can you imagine that, bro? 5 movies, that's all it was at this time. And there I was already reminiscing and thinking about all the possibilities of this film. And
like Monster Squad.
And it delivered, bro, because like you said, this has a lot of rewatchability value to it. It
does. Joss Whedon did a great job.
The way he merged all the characters, the way he had them interact. I think with these films, when you're a little kid or when you're like a fanboy like we are, one of the big sells for these films is when we're salivating on thinking how they're gonna interact with each other, right? Like we're thinking right. How is Tony Stark gonna interact?
They have to work together.
Yeah, like how is Tony Stark gonna interact with Scott Lang or or Captain America? How is he gonna interact with Black
Panther? Yeah,
Black Panther. So all this shit is like, the writing was great. Now, Josh Whedon, his writing could be hit and miss because he also writes a lot of wacky, like he's like Kevin Smith, he likes to do that humor in a lot of the
fat guy who's funny.
Well, that too, and he actually looks like Thanos a little bit more than Josh Brolin does.
In a way, yeah.
So no, this was a great film, bro, and so many parts, like the way they introduced Thor, bro, like. Everybody had a purpose to be there. It wasn't just this idea of like, well, let's just bring everybody together.
Yeah,
so they
Thor was chasing after Loki, and the Shield was chasing after the Tesseract, and Tony was trying to keep this whole thing together, and Captain America was trying to do the right thing. And then we have, of course, the great Mark Ruffalo coming in doing a great job as Banner, and we get that Thor Hulk fight early in the film, which actually gets a better payoff in Thor Ragnarok. So they fight again there, and then of course we have the infamous, Hulk was the best thing about the movie to me for a lot of reasons,
He got over.
He got over, also, bro. And he was like, I'm always angry.
But also we get Captain America fighting Iron Man. Well, how about that for foreshadowing, bro? For everything that's about to happen in
or
the
even
future.
when he hits the shield with the hammer, bro. Like there's a lot of cool stuff there, bro.
And also I love the character development here because off the hop, like Steve Rogers is just annoyed with Tony Stark, bro, because he sees who Tony Stark really is as a person. So he doesn't like him, dude. And so
but Howard Stark helped create Captain America, so there's that respect there.
Yeah, and they do talk about that.
Yeah, they do. And I also love how they had, like, for a while there, they had Jeremy Renner as the heel. And then I love the Agent Coulson death and how they have the cards with the blood on them or whatever. How it was like he believed, or whatever.
Yeah.
And that's what motivated them, bro. That was awesome.
This also introduces us to Thanos for the very first time.
In the post-credit scene, yeah, which was not Josh Brolin at the time.
No, it wasn't. It was, I think it was all CGI because he didn't say nothing.
No, it was a big black dude. I forget his name. But yeah, Thanos is played by a different guy. I forget his name. But it wasn't CGI. It was what's that gimmick that Snoke does, that motion capture?
Oh, it was motion capture,
yeah.
So
we also didn't talk about the great Paul Bettany doing the voice of Jarvis, bro, in the previous.
Oh, the great Paul Bettany, bro. We love that guy.
Oh, he gets over with me, bro.
They ought to.
Dryden Boss, bro.
That dialogue he had with another alpha, James Spader in Age of Ultron, before he takes him out.
No, Damien Portier is the guy who played Thanos in this movie.
Alex the Pug Porto? Is that what you said?
No, not him, bro. Unfortunately, it wasn't him or Timothy Well or Stephen Dunn, bro, or anybody from Smokey.
Which is rare because everybody from Smokey did something after Smokey.
Yeah.
So
except Dirty White Boy.
No, he was Teal Hopper.
Oh, that's right. He was Teal Hopper. That's right. Man, I forgot all about that.
The only thing that's weird here is that, okay, so Thanos gives Loki the Mind Stone, which is in the scepter, so that way he could manipulate people and get him to do his deed. And he tasked Loki to go get the Tesseract for him, so he could have 2 stones, right? The first thing you could wonder is why didn't he just do it himself? But we're not even going to go there.
Well, right? They did kind of explain that in the Age of Ultron. Remember how he's like, screw it, I'll do it myself. Remember?
Exactly. You're right about that.
He didn't want to do it himself. But don't forget also that the original storyline for Thanos, because remember, the original the plan, yes, because the guy says, to challenge them is to court death, and he smiles. Courting death is a pun for, seducing death. They still had that storyline in the works here. Not to mention that Avengers 2 was rumored to be Thanos, but instead they postponed it to Avengers 3, which is great because that's a whole other phase they postponed it to. So the Thanos storyline is a three-phase story. It takes over 3 phases. But they changed a lot of the original ideas here.
Yes, they did. But even so Loki's deal with Thanos or his his representative, because I don't think Loki talked to Thanos as much as he talked to the guy that Ronan kills in Guardians.
That's right, Jabroni.
And so Loki was going to get control of Earth, because Loki's whole arc is that he wanted to be king, so he was going to get control of Earth and then treat people like ants. in exchange for the Tesseract. But I don't know if Loki understood, and maybe the subtlety here is that later on in Infinity War he did understand finally.
Yeah.
But I don't think he understood what Thanos wanted with the Tesseract. All he knew, because he was consumed with all this envy and rage of not being king of Asgard, all he knew is that he wanted to be king of something, and whatever got him there, he was going to make that pact with the devil. So that's his whole motivation for coming down with the Chitauri and declaring war on Earth is he was going to be king of Earth for the Tesseract to Thanos. That was the deal. Although it wouldn't do him any good because Thanos had his own agenda.
Yeah, but Thanos' agenda, as we found out later, was not to become king of anything. It was just to fix hunger or whatever. That's stupid.
We really don't know what is it. Maybe that's a little bit of a nitpicking there. So that's why Thor comes and gets his brother, and then the thing is, one of the classic scenes of the Avengers is when Loki divides them, right? When he goes in there, and he allows them to get the scepter, because the scepter is gonna start fucking with them. So the reason why the Hulk was recruited was so he could make sense of this scepter. That's the only reason he's there. He's not there to fight. He's just there to make sense of the scepter. Through that, Loki starts manipulating everybody. This is some good writing, bro. Loki's locked up in the whole cage. That's right. But the whole time he's manipulating them because he's got the scepter out there, and they start getting agitated with each other. And there's a couple of one-take shots, bro, where they're going back and forth. All the Avengers are talking. What happens is that they realize that Nick Fury wants that scepter to create a weapon. He wants to weaponize it. Yeah. So Tony Stark's like, what's the deal with that? And then Captain America and Tony Stark start having beef with each other. Right. And then all of a sudden the Hulk starts getting annoyed. But what makes this scene awesome is the one-liners and the zingers, and it just like the writing is bang, 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 good fucking stuff. So eventually they do, and then that leads to them uniting. And then they have the big battle of New York, which is legendary, although I think it's a little too long myself.
It is a bit long, yeah. Now, I will say this, though. It's great. The fight scenes are amazing. Everybody gets their time to shine. And I love the ending. I love when Nick Fury gives that promo. Every world knows it. Dun, 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 dun. That's a perfect end to the movie right there, bro. I got goosebumps thinking about it, bro.
And then the Hulk is the one that actually defeats Loki when he does
the puny god, which Dragon Ball Super Broly did an homage to in that movie.
Oh, they stole it, you mean?
They did. They stole it, yes. Dragon Ball steals everything.
Including Aliens and Predator and all that
Toriyama's of mark for the movies that we like, bro.
Has he had anybody get shot from a rooftop? Like in Shawshank?
Yes, but it wasn't from a rooftop. That's all I'll say. Why'd you bring up that scene again, bro?
Bro, is there any boo queers in Dragon Ball?
Yes, actually there are. There is, and no, there is, and there are crooked cops as well. But there's no Clancy Brown, unfortunately. I wish there was, and there's no Elmo Blatch, unfortunately. I would have really. So, no, I do. Avengers is a classic. I mean, if somebody said it was their favorite MCU movie, I really couldn't argue. It's like, okay, that's a good pick. You know what I mean? Like, I can't argue that,
It was my number one for the longest until Civil War.
Yeah, Civil War is my number one right now.
So that's it. So they destroy Loki, or the Hulk crushes him, and then he just kind of stays frozen. They take him back to Asgard with the Tesseract. So now we know the Tesseract is back in Asgard at this point, and the Mind Stone is now with S.H.I.E.L.D. So let's keep track of that.
Yes.
And is it with S.H.I.E.L.D.? Yeah, it is with S.H.I.E.L.D. because later on Hydra would steal it when they infiltrated. Okay, yes. And that's how they create Scarlet Witch and the other guy.
Yeah.
So
Quicksilver.
So yes, so then we get the mid-credit scene, and then we get was this the first post-credit scene ever?
Yeah, in these movies, yeah, with the shawarma. In fact, I'm pretty sure that wasn't even. Remember the rumor was that wasn't even in the pre-release, that they added that like right before the movie came out.
Yes, because what happened was that Chris Evans was making another movie, and he had like a big scruffy beard, so they implanted a fake jawline on him. And if you notice, he doesn't eat. He's the only one that's not eating. He's got to cover his face.
It sounds like what they did with Superman.
With Kane the Undertaker?
No, Superman, bro. When they CGI'd his mustache off.
Yeah, it looked horrible.
Yeah.
That's why he bounced.
Yeah.
So that's it for phase one, bro.
That is it for phase one, and overall a success. Now with phase two, we do get a couple of hiccups, But boy, do we get some big payoffs too. There's like 2 bad movies, 2 great movies, and a couple of good ones in there as well.
Yes. So we're gonna get out of here right now.
We're gonna get out of here, and we'll be back for.
Okay, well, wait.
We will come back for phase 2.
Before that, just quickly, what are your thoughts at this point in your life, 2012? What are your thoughts on the MCU at that time? Do you think they're onto something? Do you think are you happy?
Dude, when they showed Thanos in the post-credit scene, remember that? Well, I don't know if you know this, but that's my favorite villain. For a long time, that was my favorite villain of all time, bro. So when they showed him, I popped. I popped like a little girl, bro, and I can't wait.
The jabroni, did you get that tingling feeling when they show space after the?
Yes. And I knew what it was. No, because it leaked out. Remember, like, oh, Thanos is in the post credit. Thanos. And I was like, oh my God, we're gonna get the Infinity War. We're gonna get it was the Infinity Gauntlet storyline.
Yes.
And I had to explain to the person I was dating at the time. I had to explain to them, like, I had to go through the whole storyline of the comics. Like, oh yeah, death means this, and this is gonna happen. And it didn't pan out the exact way that it was in the comics, but it was still it worked for what they did.
At that time, I think the MCU was in full swing. I think because remember they were also doing.
But they definitely changed directions too.
We'll talk about that in the next episode when we're talking about phase 2. But at that time, remember they would do that gimmick where they would start releasing their upcoming titles. And I think at that time, Iron Man 3, Thor: The Dark World, and Captain America were already greenlit. I want to say the Guardians too, but I could be wrong on that.
Well, but they really did that for phase 3. That's when they really had like the big list of upcoming movies.
Which is the one they canceled?
The Inhumans. That was canceled.
The Inhumans.
Yeah, that was canceled.
Yes.
I forgot what the story was behind that, but yeah, that was canceled.
Well, they implemented them on Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., and then they were gonna make it was gonna be a TV show, and then for whatever reason they decided to debut the first 2 episodes on IMAX.
They didn't get over, though, is what happened.
Because I think IMAX funded some of that show, and it had the worst Marvel opening of all time, and they just decided to scrap it all together. So the Inhumans didn't get over, brother. They're not all wins, brother.
No, but at least they have the X-Men now going into phase 4.
So is that who they're supposed to be? The Inhumans were going to play the part of the X-Men?
They were kind of like the same idea, yeah, but they weren't the same. They didn't have the same like roster, as you know.
Of course not, bro. That's a legendary roster.
The X-Men's legendary, bro.
All right,
I can't wait to see Mike Fassbender in the MCU, bro. And James McAvoy, dog. Too many alphas, bro.
That's if they keep the same cast.
They have to. At least those 2. Come on, bro.
And Hugh Jackman.
Yeah, exactly. I don't care about the other jabronis. Just those are okay, bro. Fucking who's that bitch that plays Mystique, bro? Not Rebecca Romijn, the new one.
Jennifer Lawrence.
Fuck her. She's an idiot. Fucking, I don't care about her. But fucking everybody else. Patrick Stewart, bro. Fucking bring him back.
No, you gotta take your pick. You can't have the old man.
No, I want them both, bro. Oh, he's alpha too, bro.
This ain't Days of Futures Past right here.
Warp 1, engage. Hey, he was alpha on that show, bro.
Remember, you shed a tear in Logan because of his performance, bro.
I did. And because he looks like my dad, and that brought back memories of my dad passing away when he died, and that made me cry. That whole movie made me cry, bro. You can't go through that movie without crying, bro. Logan is very powerful.
You think if you watch it now, it will still have the same impact?
No, but the first time it
You're
did.
a jaded mother effer now.
No, the first time it did, but when you know it's coming, it's like, because I was like, no, I was so pissed off when they killed him.
What about when Hugh Jackman kills Hugh Jackman, bro?
Yeah, that was cool.
Juiced up Hugh Jackman kills
juiced up Hugh Jackman. They're both juiced up, bro. Remember, The Rock trained him, bro. With what was that bullshit he said? All I ate was chicken and broccoli. He said he ate 3 whole chickens. Okay, sure.
Maybe alive. I'll believe it.
Maybe drink the blood like the Santeria rituals.
So what do you believe more? That he's not on the juice, or that he had $7 in his pocket at his worst?
They're both full of shit, bro. And you know it. No, brother, the fact that he believes that him and Cena at WrestleMania 19 or 29 was a good match, bro.
I know he doesn't believe that.
He can't believe that, bro. He can't.
It ain't Kenny Omega, bro.
No, he's not Kenny Omega, bro. For various reasons, bro. One of them is the fact that he actually likes women. So.
All right, so we're out of here, man. We'll catch them out in phase 2.
Yep, we'll see y'all in phase 2 later.